Hi, welcome to the AllBrands Show. Today, me, your host, Courtney Dowdett. Today, we have a fantastic show, and I am extremely excited because we have one of the best educated minds out there, if I'm going to be so honest to say. We have Rhonda Pierce here today with Schmetz. If you have ever had a question, and I know I've had a few, where it's, okay, I have a specialty material, what is this? We're getting this answered today. So if you are watching right now, the 27th of February at 3:30 Central Time, we are live. So I highly encourage you to start putting in comments right now. And I am seeing some of your comments coming in. Roxanne, hello. Patty, hello. Sharon, she said, from Liberty Center, Ohio, I use Schmetz needles and want to know more about them. Absolutely. Now, this is the perfect time to get all of your questions answered, a lot of my questions answered. We're really going to make the most of having Rhonda here. I'm absolutely excited that she's here. Hello, Cindy. Hello, Terry. Hello, Brenda. Oh my goodness, you guys are flooding. Hello, Annie. Annie is a part of our AllBrands membership group, AllBrands Behind the Scenes. Hello. And hello, another member of our group. Hello, guys. Oh my gosh. And I'm noticing some hashtag AllBrands already. If you guys don't know, every single week on the Thursday live show, when we are live, we do a $25 AllBrands e-gift card. And the only thing that you have to do is comment hashtag AllBrands. That's all you have to do to be entered to win that $25 AllBrands e-gift card. So put it in your hashtag AllBrands throughout the show right now. Do it right now. Just don't forget. Just do it right now. Just put in that hashtag AllBrands, and it's going to enter you to win that $25 AllBrands e-gift card. Now, if you put multiple times, no, it does not better your chances. I've asked and I've tried. So, oh goodness, that I just saw the flood of comments. Just pull through with the hashtag AllBrands. So fantastic. All right, guys. So without further ado, I would love to bring on stage Rhonda. Hello.
Hello, Courtney. I'm delighted to be here today.
Well, I guess we have I feel like we're going to have so many questions, but I know that you have a fantastic presentation to show us. And I appreciate you coming on because I feel like a lot of people that are just starting out, it feels like a lot of information to be able to get all at once. But I love the way that you lay things out perfectly.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm going to cover a lot of information about the hardest working 2-inch piece of steel in your sewing machine. And I'll also have resources to help keep it all straight. So don't worry, you're not going to collect all the information today, but you know what? You're going to know where to find additional information at no charge. So to make your sewing easier.
That is fantastic. And this video does save onto our YouTube channel. So if you guys are ever like, what was she talking about? Hold on. You can always go back and replay her. We've got Rhonda now forever. So I'm not going to take up any more time. Take it away, Rhonda.
Okay, well, hello, everyone. As Courtney said, my name is Rhonda Pierce. I love to sew, I love to quilt, and today I'm in my home sewing room. And doesn't everyone have an 8-foot banner of the Schmetz color chart? Today's presentation is about 45 minutes. It's broken into 3 different sections. First, I'm going to start with some very basic things about the Schmetz needle, like the points, the eyes, how to read the color chart, etc. And then I'll scoot along to specific needles for piecing and quilting, sewing with knits, etc. And then I have a mystery question. And I'm pretty sure it's a question that you've asked yourself. So let's go ahead and get started. So I always like to start with the parts of the needle. And yes, this is my Schmetz Super Demo needle. It's 17 inches tall and anatomically correct. It's 11 times the size your regular home sewing machine needle. Again, I like to start with the parts of the needle because once you know the parts of the needle and their function, it makes your needle selection so much easier. So let's get started. Now, my needle's mounted on a little wooden base, but I think even virtually, you can see that the very top of your needle has a beveled edge. This is referred to as the butt of the needle, and you might think, so what? What does a beveled edge mean to me? Well, stop and think about it. When you go to insert a new needle in your machine, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. So the top of the needle's beveled for easier insertion into your needle holder. Our home sewing machines require a flat shank. 98% of all of our home sewing machines require a flat shank, again, for perfect positioning into your needle holder. We have a little transitional area referred to as the shoulder of the needle, and I hope you've noticed that your needles have either one or two bands of color, and we'll talk about that Schmetz color chart shortly. We have the length of the needle, which is referred to as the blade of the needle, and the size of the needle is determined by the size of the blade. So Schmetz, being a German company, they use the metric system. So they'll measure this area here of the needle, and they'll get a measurement like 0.70, 0.80, etc. They take that physical measurement times 100 to come up with the sizes that we're familiar with, sizes 70, 80, 90, etc. So now that you know that the needle size is based on a physical measurement of the blade, it's easier to remember that a size 90 needle is larger than a size 70 needle. So I hope I answered one of those little mysteries you might have about your needle. Okay, back to our blade. How many of you have noticed the groove on the front of your needle? You can actually see and feel the groove on your little 2-inch piece of steel, but what's the purpose of the groove? The groove is going to cradle your thread so it moves evenly and smoothly down the length of the needle to the eye. When you're sewing, your thread should not be flip-flopping back and forth. It should move evenly and smoothly so you get a nice clean stitch. We have the point and the tip, and these change according to different needle types. And on the back side of the needle, how many of you have noticed this little indentation above the eye? This is referred to as the scarf of the needle. And the scarf has a very important function. When your needle passes through your fabric and the throat plate, the bobbin hook has to come up and catch that top thread in order to create the stitch. So the bobbin hook needs passing room in order to create the stitch. So those are the basic parts to your needle. And I've got some slides here that I want to show you. Let me get to the right spot. And here we go. Here's a nice image of our needle. The butt, the shank, the shoulder, the blade, the groove, the point, the tip.
I don't think it presented properly on our end.
What's that?
I don't think the slide came up on our end.
Oh, it's showing here and it says stop sharing. Okay, let me stop.
Did you select the screen to share that particular screen?
Yeah. All right, let me end and let me go back to present, to share screen, to share, to window,
it's like when we test ran this, it went beautiful.
Yes. Always a little quirk there. It says
gotta love alive. Gotta love alive.
It says I'm sharing. No go?
No go on this one. No, from our end.
All right. Well, let me see here. I will go without my slides then. Oh, that's just disappointing. Let me end here. And let me try this.
Guys, remember, hashtag AllBrands. I'm seeing them in the chat. And put your questions. Please put your questions. We're starring them right now. So put your questions. Even if you think that it's a no-brainer question and you're like, oh, this must be a beginner question. There are other beginners watching this that are wanting you to ask that question so they know the answer too. So there are no ridiculous questions. Please put all of your questions in the chat to get them answered. We highly recommend it because, again, there might be some other people that are new to it or never even thought to ask that question before.
Exactly. So go ahead, feel free to ask your questions and I'll try to answer them. So I guess we're going to do this an old-fashioned way since I can't share my screen, but you know what? I've got plan B. So let's look. I didn't mention yet the eye of the needle. And I consider the eye to be one of the most important features to your Schmetz needle. Now, Courtney, when you look at this, can you read the image?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I can.
Okay, because they're mirrored on my side.
Oh, funny. No, I can read it. You're good.
Okay. So I like to talk about the eyes of the needle. I feel that oftentimes we kind of overlook the eye. I know you have to thread it, but let's look at the differences between the eyes. So your everyday needle, the universal needle, the eye is 40% the width of the blade. But look at the eye of the embroidery needle, and you can see that the eye is wider. And when you look at the eye of the top stitch in the metallic, oh, you can see that the eye is elongated. So when you're sewing, what does a larger eye mean to you? A larger eye means there's less stress on your thread as it's passing through the eye of the needle. So if you're sewing and your threads are breaking and shredding, what are you going to do? Well, you need to change your needle. And if you just started your project, maybe you need to move up a needle size or change to a different needle type that has a larger eye. So remember this, and I'll tell you later how you can get up an image of this, this diagram here. All right, let's scoot along and let's talk about the Schmetz color chart that is behind me. So you can kind of date some of your Schmetz needles just by the color bands. The 2 color bands were instituted in 2014. So keep that in mind. Before 2014, there were 5 needle types that had a single band of color to identify quilting, microtex, jeans, quilting, and jersey. But today I want to make sure you're comfortable reading the chart because all of your Schmetz needles, all your newer Schmetz needles have the 1 or 2 bands of color. So off to the side here, we've got 2 columns. The one column is labeled needle type. So most of the Schmetz needle types are assigned a color. And on the other side of our chart, the column is labeled needle size. And all of the different needle sizes are assigned a color. Now look at the needle between the 2 columns. You've got 2 bands of color. The top color band identifies your needle type. So on this sample here, the top color band is yellow. So we look off to the side under needle type and we find yellow is a stretch needle. The lower color band identifies your needle size. So on this sample here, the color band is that rosy pink. So we look off to the side and we find rosy pink is size 7511. So this sample here is a stretch size 7511 needle. But let me walk you through a couple other examples. What if your needle has a top color band of purple and a lower color band of orange? What needle type and size would that be? Well, we look here under needle types and we find orange is a microtex needle. For the lower color band of orange, we look off to the side under size and we find orange is a size 8012 needle. So a needle with a top color band of purple and a lower color band of orange is a microtex size 8012. One more example would be, what if your needle has 2 bands of orange? What needle type and size would that be? Well, we look under needle type and we find orange is a jersey needle. And for the lower color band of orange, it's still a size 8012. So 2 bands of orange is a jersey size 8012 needle. Now, there's one more thing I want to point out about the Schmetz color chart, and that has to do right here with the universal needle. There's no color. In fact, the box is X'd out. So what does that mean? Universal needles have only 1 band of color, and that's to identify your needle's size. So if you have a universal size 8012, well, you just have a single band of orange. If you have a universal size 9014, you have just a single band of blue. So I hope this Schmetz color chart helps you identify your needles, especially after you've taken them out of your package. So be aware of the color bands. Now, let's talk about all the information on your little Schmetz needle pack. I just happen to have a picture here of one. So currently, at the bottom of your Schmetz needle pack, you find the needle size. So on this sample here, the size is 9014. And I think most everyone recognizes needle size or sizes. But what about that number above the size? Have you seen that 130 705H and wondered, what the heck does that mean? 130/705 is referred to as the needle system. Think of it as a model number. 130/705 means that the needle has a flat shank, and the H translates from a German word that means scarf. So needle system 130/705H is a flat shank needle with a scarf that we use in most of our home sewing machines. So be aware of that number. Now, if you have a serger, you might use a different needle system. You might use an ELX 705, and you don't want to use that in your sewing machine. If you have a long arm machine, you might use a different needle system like a 206X13 or a 134R or a 135X5. And you cannot use those needles in your home sewing machine. So be aware of the needle system. 130/705H is a flat shank needle with a scarf that most of our home sewing machines require. Now, the other thing I want to point out about the needle system as line is look a little bit closer here, because on this sample, there's an additional letter, a -E, E for embroidery. So on some of your other needle packs, you might find a -Q for quilting, or J for jeans, or M for microtex, etc. So lots of information on your needle system line. Above that, you've got the needle type spelled out. So this sample here are embroidery needles. Above that, even today, sometimes you'll still see the German word for needle. Above that is the Schmetz name, and above that, through the clear packaging, you can see the color bands. So if you remember the Schmetz color chart, when we look off to the side under needle type, we would find red for embroidery. And the lower color band on these needles is blue for size 9014. So lots of information. And in fact, if you stop and think about it, there's a lot of redundant information on your little Schmetz needle pack. So keep that in mind. Okay, so we've covered some good basics here. Let me see. Billy's asking, do Schmetz needles expire? She has some needles from the 80s, the 1980s. And no, they do not expire. If you have not exposed the needles to dust or moisture, you can still use those needles. So I know oftentimes we inherit, I know I inherited Schmetz needles from my mom and my grandmother. So yes, I'm still using some of them, and they don't all have the color band. So very good question. Okay, so the Schmetz color chart, AllBrands has that link posted for you in the chat, so you can Sharon is asking where to get that chart, so you can just look up the link right there in AllBrands. Anne says she has a lot of old Schmetz needles, so go ahead and use those. If you've taken care of them, you should be just fine. ML is asking, are the colors universal between the brands? And no, there are other needle manufacturers out there, and they have their own color system. So really, the Schmetz color chart is the only one you need. All right. ML is asking about special features for embroidery versus domestic. Oh, must be industrial embroidery needles. Well, I'll kind of address that right now. If you have an industrial embroidery machine, you probably use a different needle system. So what you really need to do is get your owner's manual and look up what needle system you use. Some of the 10 or 12 needle embroidery machines can use a regular home sewing machine needle. That's needle system 13705H. But if you have a quasi-industrial or commercial machine, you need to find out exactly what needle system to use. So I would use AllBrands as a resource to get that information. Okay, so let's scoot along and let me just ask, what do you think the most popular needle type is? And I bet most of you would know or would guess that the universal needle is the most popular needle type. So I just happen to have a pack of universal needles here. So what's so special about universal needles? Well, the universal needle has a slightly rounded point. So it works well on your woven fabrics and your knit fabrics. Plus, the universal needle is available in the widest range of sizes, from the smallest size 60 all the way up to a size 120. Plus, there are universal twin and triple needles too. So lots of variety for your universal. When I do informal surveys or when I look at our sales reports, universal size 8012 is the most popular needle type and size, followed by universal size 9014. So no matter what kind of sewing, piecing, quilting you like to do, I always suggest you have universal 8012 and 9014 in your stash. So let's scoot along and let's talk about specific needles for different types of sewing. Let's first talk about piecing and quilting. How many of you like to make quilts or piece quilts? Yes, lots of us do. And there are 5 needle types popular for piecing and quilting. So if you're taking notes here today, this is a good time to write down these 5 needle types for piecing and for quilting. And universal, the workhorse of all needle types. Lots of people, lots of famous quilters like to use the universal for both piecing and for quilting. But let's look at a couple other needle types. We've got the jeans needle, also known as a denim needle. Does that surprise you for piecing and quilting? Well, how many of you like to make denim quilts or flannel quilts or those heavy duty raggy quilts? And when you're working on those projects, you want a hardy needle. So what's so special about the jeans needle? The jeans needle has an optimized blade, an optimized reinforced blade. So when the needle passes through your heavier or your denser fabrics, there's less needle deflection, less movement of the needle. So you get a cleaner stitch with that optimized blade. So that's the jeans needle, also known as a denim needle, for your denim quilts, flannel quilts, and those heavy duty raggy quilts. And I'll also just mention, if you like to make those popular coiled bowls, you want a jeans needle. This needle is up to the task when you're making those coiled bowls. Another needle popular for piecing and quilting is the top stitch needle. This needle, like the universal needle, has a slightly rounded point. But the big difference is in the eye. If you remember that diagram about the eye of the needle, the top stitch needle has an elongated eye. So there's less stress on your thread as it's passing through the eye of the needle. And some people like to piece and quilt with the top stitch needle. Another needle, just as the name suggests, is the quilting needle. But guess what? you can use this needle for piecing too. So what's so special about the quilting needle? The quilting needle is specifically engineered for piecing and quilting with a special tapered point. A special tapered point so you get really nice clean stitches for your piecing and for your quilting. You'll probably use the smaller size 7511 for the piecing of your project and the larger size 9014 for the quilting of your project. And one other needle type popular for piecing and quilting, do you know what it is? It's my favorite needle, and that's the microtex needle, generically known as a sharp needle. So when your books and patterns say use a sharp needle, well, they're referring to a Schmetz microtex needle. The microtex needle has a very slim acute point, very slim acute point. So with the microtex needle, you get the most precise stitches. And because the microtex has that very slim acute point, guess what? The microtex is going to dull quicker than any other needle type. So you will need to replace your microtex more frequently than any other needle type. So if you're taking notes here today, let me do a quick review. And guess what? AllBrands has all these needles already bundled up for you as a simple sampler. This is the piecing and quilting sampler that includes a pack of the universal needle, the workhorse of all needle types. The piecing and quilting bundle includes the jeans needle with that optimized blade, which is really fantastic when you're working with your jeans quilts, flannel quilts, and those heavy-duty raggy quilts. The top stitch needle with a slightly rounded point, but it has that elongated eye. So there's less stress on your thread as it's passing through the eye of the needle. The quilting needle, specifically designed for piecing and for quilting. You'll probably use the smaller size 7511 for the piecing of your project and the larger size 9014 for the quilting of your project. And last but not least is the microtex needle, generically known as a sharp needle. And I think I forgot to tell you, but if you like to sew, piece, or quilt with batik fabrics, the microtex is your needle of choice. Even if you pre-wash your batik fabrics, the microtex can just stitch beautifully through your batik fabrics, even if they're still kind of tightly woven and still may have some dye residue. So when you're looking for precision stitches, the microtex is up for the task. All these needles you can find as single cards at AllBrands, but guess what? They've got them bundled up for you with the handy little luggage tag with the Schmetz color chart. So I have one hanging right here in my sewing room. But I also travel with this on my luggage, and I also have it on my sewing machines and serger. So on the back, you can put your information, and it's a great way to meet people. I always meet people at the airport, and they'll say, "Oh, do you sew?" I said, "Well, yes." "You've got the Schmetz tag." "Oh," I kind of forget I have it, but it's handy. And the bundles also come with the handy little Schmetz ABC Pocket Guide, which is the foundation to today's class. So get this little bundle for yourself, or if you've got a friend that's just learning to sew, or you need a gift for a sewing buddy, this is a handy bundle to get. All right, so piecing and quilting. Let's move on to sewing with knits. Now, when I first learned to sew with knit, it was with double polyester. How many of you remember double polyester? Well, knits have come a long way since double polyester. And they're beautiful knits that are available. And if you're not familiar with working with knits, the needle will make a huge difference in your sewing success. So if you're sewing with knits, there are two needle types that you must have when you're sewing with knits. And the first is a jersey needle, generically known as a a ballpoint needle. The jersey needle has a medium ballpoint. The other needle that you need in your stash when you're sewing with knits is a stretch needle. And guess what? The stretch needle also has a medium ballpoint. But when you compare the stretch and the jersey, the stretch needle has a smaller eye and a deeper scarf. So now the stretch needle is going to play just a little bit differently with your thread, your fabric, your machine, and your technique. So if you're sewing with knits, well, how do you know? Do you use a jersey or a stretch needle? Well, there's a rule of thumb that's going to work about 80% of the time. If you're working with just a regular knit fabric, use the jersey needle. But if your knit fabric has lycra, spandex, or elastic, use the stretch needle. Sometimes stretch and jersey are interchangeable, but not always. So I always recommend that you have both on hand. So the general rule of thumb is if your knit fabric has lycra, spandex, or elastic, and most of our knit fabrics today do, use a stretch needle. The other needle, if you're working with just a regular knit, is a jersey needle. And again, sometimes they're interchangeable. The other thing I want to mention about the stretch needle is how many of you like to sew, piece, or quilt with cuddle fabrics or minky? I think I'm the cuddle queen. I have all kinds of coats and quilts and vests that I've made out of minky and cuddle. And when you're working on that plush, stretchy fabric, you want the stretch 90-14. That's going to make a huge difference when you're sewing with minky and with cuddle. And I'll also just mention, because I love cuddle and minky so much, if you've been afraid of that particular type of fabric, I want you to just jump right in. But here's a tip for you. You need to be very aggressive in your pinning. You need to pin parallels to your stitch line and also perpendicular to your stitch line, and be sure that you pull out that pin before you stitch over it or you'll wreck your needle. So stretch and jersey needles. Yep, guess what? AllBrands has these already bundled up for you. This is the Sewing with Knits bundle. It has both the jersey and the stretch needle with the handy little laminated luggage tag with the Schmetz color chart and the ABC pocket guide. And I can see some of the comments, and I can see that some of you already have the luggage tag and the ABC pocket guide. So I'm so pleased to know that. All right, let's scoot along. Oh, Clovis, hello. I see you pop up on my screen. It's been a while. All right, let's scoot along and let's talk about another category of needles that came out right before the pandemic. So if you don't know about them, well, I'm glad you're here today so I can help keep you informed. So one of the newest needles is the Schmetz Super Nonstick Super Universal Needle. The first thing you're going to notice about this needle is the color. It's kind of a gunmetal color or charcoal gray. And what is that? Oh, it's an anti-adhesive coating. I can't use that T word that we find in our pots and pans in our kitchens, but that's what it is, an anti-adhesive coating. So that's why the needle looks a little bit darker than our regular home sewing machine needles. But the Super Nonstick Super Universal also has two other wonderful features. This needle has a reinforced blade. A reinforced blade, so when you're sewing, there's less needle deflection when the stitch is made. And the Super Nonstick Super Universal also has an enlarged eye, so there's less stress on your thread as it's passing through the eye of the needle. So 3 great features to this needle. When are you going to use them? Well, how many of you like to do machine embroidery or machine applique? This is a great needle choice because oftentimes you're working with a stabilizer that has an adhesive or a fusible. And when you're stitching so fast, what happens to that adhesive? Yeah, it gets warm. And then it has a tendency to gum up your needle. So you'll get more stitching time with the Super Nonstick Super Universal needle. Also, if you like to work with oilcloth or splash fabric, this is a great needle choice. It's a great needle choice too for vinyl. What happens when you're working with vinyl? The vinyl gets warm and has a tendency to hug your needle, and then you can't see where you're sewing. So the Super Nonstick Super Universal is great for sewing with vinyl. And one other fabrication is hoop and loop tape and Velcro, which is sticky on one side, crispy on another, and fuzzy in between. And the Super Nonstick Super Universal can just stitch through all those different textures. So this needle is available in 4 sizes 70, 80, 90, and 100. And AllBrands has these already bundled up for you as a sampler with the luggage tag and the ABC pocket guide. And I think, yep, they've got the link right there in the chat. Now, there's one more thing I want to mention about the Super Nonstick Super Universal. I strongly advise you, if you are working on white or light fabric or white or light thread, that you do some sample stitches first, because every once in a while we'll get a report that there's excess residue on the needle and it'll leave spots on your white or light fabric. So do some sample stitches before you do your actual project. So just a little heads up on that. One of the little quirks about this needle, but otherwise it works fantastic. Okay, one other group of needles I want to bring to your attention. Oh, here they are. And that's for machine embroidery. How many of you like to do machine embroidery? Well, 3 needle types for machine embroidery. Well, we've got our classic embroidery needle. This is a chrome finish needle. All of our Schmetz needles have a chrome finish. So this is like many of the other Schmetz needles. Chrome resists heat and wear. There's less resistance to the needle passing through your fabric. And if you remember that diagram about the eye of the needle, the embroidery needle has an enlarged eye. So there's less stress on your thread as it's passing through the eye of the needle. In embroidery, you also have another choice. You've got a titanium embroidery needle. We refer to it as the embroidery gold needle. Like the regular embroidery needle, this needle also has an enlarged eye. But the embroidery gold needle has a titanium coating, which gives the needle extra strength and helps to keep the needle a little bit cooler too. So you've got a couple choices. Both the regular chrome and the embroidery gold both come in 2 sizes, 7511 and then the larger size 9014. And last but not least for machine embroidery, and we already talked about this needle, and that's your Super Nonstick Super Universal needle, which has that anti-adhesive coating, the enlarged eye, and the reinforced blade. So lots of great features. You've got choices when you're working on your embroidery projects. And these AllBrands has this sample bundle already bundled up for you with the luggage tag, the handy luggage tag, and the ever popular ABC pocket guide. So I think that link is in the chat there for you too. Okay, is your head swimming with all the different information? Okay, let's see. Let me see if I can answer a few questions here. Annette says she has a brother sewing machine. Let me see here. Cindy's asking about a Brother PRS 100 embroidery machine. And you know what, Cindy? I'm not familiar with that model. I know that home sewing machines, Brother home sewing machines, use regular um, Schmetz needles, but that particular model I'm not familiar with. So I'm going to ask AllBrands to answer that particular question. Roxanne,
You can use Schmetz. It's totally fine. I depends on what you're doing. It's kind of it depends. I mean, if you're it's just like any other sewing machine. It's just an at-home sewing machine for that model. So again, as Rhonda's been explaining, the different needle types are for different materials that you're using. So it really depends on which ones you're using. But the
okay.
cards are helpful.
Well, and I'll tell you, there's so many different types of machines, and I mean, I know all the big brands, but when it comes down to models, my head is spinning. So good to know. Thank you. Roxanne is asking what's the best size of needle for embroidery. And you know, it really has to do with the type of fabric and the weight of your fabric. So sometimes it's kind of a dance. If it's a lighter project, use the smaller size 7511. But if it's a little denser or you're working with a little bit heavier fabric, you might want to try the size 9014. Sometimes there's so many different variations in our fabrics and our threads, our designs and our techniques that sometimes you really have to experiment with the different needle sizes. Okay, Nancy, I think I answered your question about serger needles, but I think what I'll give you a little bit additional information. Some of our sergers, like my serger says to use needle system ELX 705. That is a flat shank needle, like our regular home sewing machine needle. But ELX 705, how it is different is it has a groove on the front of the needle, like our regular home sewing machine needle. But ELX 705 has a second groove on the back side of the needle. And sometimes some of your specialty serger stitches need that additional groove. So be aware. Sometimes you can use a regular home sewing machine needle. Sometimes I might use a stretch or a universal in my serger. But when my stitches start to look wonky, oh, well, then I'm going to do what the manufacturer says. When you look at your serger, if you open up the cover of your serger, inside you will find either a label or an imprint that will suggest what needle type, what needle system to use. So it's important information to know. So Patty, serger and sewing machine needles are sometimes interchangeable on our serger, but not on our sewing machines. So don't use a serger needle on your sewing machine. Okay, Charlene, I think I answered your question on serger. Okay, Elizabeth, explain microtex. Microtex is generically known as a sharp needle. The microtex needle has a very slim acute point. Very slim acute point. So with the microtex, you get the most precise stitches. And because the microtex has that very slim acute point, it's going to dull quicker than any other needle type. So be prepared to swap out your microtex needle. And I think I mentioned earlier that if you're working with batik fabrics, the microtex is your needle of choice. That sharp point will just stitch beautifully through your batiks. Beatha is asking the best way to store needles. Very good question. I will come back to that. Okay, another question is the non-stick, the one for vinyl. Yes. When you're working with vinyl, you want to use the super non-stick needle. Yep, and that comes in the 4 sizes, 70, 80, 90, and 100. Lady Fair is asking for a guide for industrial needles. Wow. You know, I am so happy that our home sewing machines, 98% of all of our home sewing machines use the flat shank needle with the scarf needle system 13705H. When you get to industrial needles, it's a whole different ballpark. So I know on AllBrands, they have a wealth of information about industrial needles, and certainly you can chat with them about different needle systems or what your industrial machine requires. There's also information at schmetzneedles.com about industrial. There's one specific section titled industrial that you can refer to also. Okay, Billy, Billy Lou, did you say it works with applique and steamacine or heat and bond? I would use the super nonstick for appliques or steamacine and the heat and bond. Again, those fabrications oftentimes have, they get kind of sticky. So the super nonstick is a great needle choice. Okay, so I see there are a couple other questions, and I'm going to come back to those because I'm going to answer a couple other questions. So I'm averaging over 100 virtual presentations a year, and I'm starting to get out in person now too, and I'm really happy to see people and see what you're making. And there's always one popular question. And what is that question? How long does a needle last? How long does a needle last? And I'm going to say, I don't know. But I can tell you, let's see. I think I've got a picture here somewhere. I can tell you that when you're sewing, your needle should never, ever look like this. This is really a nasty looking needle. I think even virtually, you can see all the little pock marks, how dull that needle is. Look at that super burr and look at all those burrs and striations. So what's that needle going to do to your beautiful fabrics? Yep, it's just going to eat up your fabric. So what are you going to do? Change out your needle. So how long does a needle last? I don't know. It could be 3 seconds if you hit a pin right away. And when you hit a pin, I know your first thought is, oh my goodness, I just bent the needle. And maybe you did. But I guarantee if you just hit a pin, what you did is you just compromised the point and the tip. So what are you going to do? Change out your needle. Maybe you can get 20 hours of sewing time. Maybe you don't push or pull your fabric underneath the foot. So 3 seconds, 20 hours, that's quite the span of time. I know people say, no, I try to change my needle every 6 to 8 hours of sewing time. Well, how many of you can actually time yourself? It's impossible. So rather than ask, how long does a needle last? What I want you to do is to reframe that question too. What are the clues to changing the needle while you're sewing? When you're sewing, what are the clues to changing out your needle? And we kind of touched upon one clue already, and that's when your thread is breaking and shredding. What you may not know is if you're not changing your needle frequently enough, the thread will actually wear a groove in the eye of the needle, and that's not a good thing. A groove in the eye of the needle, what's it going to do? Break and shred your thread. So what are you going to do? Change out your needle. When you're sewing, what's happening to your fabrics? Is your fabric puckering? Is the needle snagging your fabric? Or in a severe case, the needle hits your fabric and tucks the fabric into your throat plate. Hello, those are clues that you need to change out your needle. While you're sewing, what's happening to your stitches? Are your stitches skipping? Are your seams uneven? Or maybe you're sitting at your machine saying, well, I'm sewing in a straight line. How can my stitches look kind of wiggly squiggly? Well, guess what? Your needle is dull. So what are you going to do? change out your needle. And one other clue. Hopefully, when you're sewing, you're in that bubble. All is right in my sewing world. My machine is humming along. And then you start to hear the little click, click, clicking sound. And what is it? Oh, it's your needle saying, hey, I've been working hard here. Change me. If you ignore the clicking sound, it graduates to a pop, pop, popping sound. Now your needle is yelling at you, change me, change me. If you ignore the clicking and the popping, what's happening now? Clunk, clunk, clunk. Now your needle is begging, change me, change me. So today I'm not here just to sell you more needles, but I really want you to have a wonderful sewing experience. And that includes changing out the needle. So let's just stop and think about something. You've spent a lot of money on your machine or your machines, right? It's a nice investment. No matter how much you've paid for your machine, it's a big investment. You've spent money collecting all those beautiful fabrics, including the secret fabric stashes. You've gathered a generous collection of beautiful threads. And I'm going to guess you spent money on books and patterns, retreats, workshops, lectures, etc. And what about your sewing time? Your sewing time is an investment too. So what are we going to do here? We're going to take that entire investment cycle right down to the hardest working 2-inch piece of steel in your sewing machine, which is also the least expensive part, and change out the needle. So don't be afraid to change out the needle when things start to go a little bit wonky. What's the first thing you're going to do? Change out your needle. All right. Now, I know that in the real world, we oftentimes juggle projects. Maybe you're working on a quilt and now you're going to make a little t-shirt for a kiddo. So you've changed out your needle type and size. You finished that little t-shirt and now you come back to that original needle that you were using on your quilt. And you think, I changed that needle right before I started. I didn't really get that much sewing time with my needle. How do you know that that needle is still sewing worthy? Well, here's 2 little tips for you. You can take that slightly used needle and run it across your fingernail. And if it leaves a scratch on your nail, guess what? You've got a burr and you need to toss that needle. Or if you've got a pair of old hose or maybe jersey fabric, run that needle across your fabric. If it snags, guess what? You've got a burr and you need to toss it. But if that needle is still sewing worthy, how are you going to keep track of it? I know a lot of people like to just toss it off to the side and they'll say, oh, I'll remember. I used to be like that too. But I've got something special for you that'll keep your slightly used needles quite handy. Many of you are probably familiar with the Grab-It magnetic pin cushion. These are in sewing rooms around the world. This is my favorite color. I'm here in my own sewing room, so I like this limoncello yellow. And I like the Grab-It sewing tool product so much that we bought the company over 10 years ago. And one of the products that they have is the Grab-It My Pad Needle Organizer. This is the hang card. This is what it looks like. So when you go to AllBrands, this is what you're going to see hanging on the Notions wall. What is the Grab-It My Pad Needle Organizer? It's a 7.5-inch square of thick felt, extra thick felt. And during COVID, I updated the Grab-It My Pad. So now all of the Schmetz needle types are shown here using the color codes. Red for embroidery, orange for jersey, green for quilting, etc. Within each needle type, then there's a cell for each of the different needle sizes. So if you've got a slightly used needle, you just slide it into the appropriate needle type and size. It comes with a little flower head pin. It might be white or it might be yellow. And if you've got some of those older Schmetz needles that you inherited from mom or grandma and they don't have the color code, Once you take that needle out of the package and put it in your machine, use the flower head pin to identify the needle currently in your sewing machine. So I just slid it here into Jersey size 9014. So since I'm in my own home sewing room, today I'm going to show you my own my pad. So last year when we had one of those Arctic freezes and I was home for 3 days sewing, I embellished 16 sets of bath towels, hand towels, and washcloths using some of my scraps. And I used a lot of my slightly used needles. So my grab at my pad is looking a little bit lean right now, but here you can see that I've been using and experimenting with quite a few of the twin needles. So these you can get from AllBrands. All right, let's scoot along here. Let me see. Let me take some other question. Oh, okay. So one of the questions is about what needle size should I use? Well, let me give you my rule of thumb. If I'm working with a 40 weight thread, I generally use a size 80-12 needle. Doesn't matter what the brand of thread is, but I generally, for an everyday thread, a 40 weight thread, I generally use a size 80-12 needle. Now, if I'm going to be working with a heavier weight thread, something heavier than a 40 weight, then I know I need to move up at least one needle size, if not more. So if I'm working with a heavier weight thread, then I'll move up to a size 90 or maybe even a size 100 or 110. So again, my benchmark for determining needle size is 40 weight thread with an 80-12 needle. Then if I'm going to be working with a finer thread, I'll move down a size or two to 75-11, maybe a 70-10. Or if I'm working with some of those small micro threads, I might use a size 65 or a size 60. So that's a good rule of thumb. All right, so let me just walk you through the ABC Pocket Guide. There's lots of free information in here. So the first thing you're going to notice on the cover is the circle of needles. And when you get your ABC Pocket Guide, and these come with the bundles that I talked about today, take note of the eyes, the points, and the tips, because sometimes these features are ever so slight but powerful. When you go to our consumer website, schmetzneedles.com, right on the home page, you will see that all these needles are identified. And where's the universal needle on this diagram? It's at 9 o'clock. So take a look and study on those. Okay, in our ABC Pocket Guide, we have an alphabetical list, index for all the needles. We have a review of what all that information means on your little Schmetz needle pack. We have a 2-page spread on the points of the needles. So that's good information to know. Here's this diagram about the eyes of the needle. So you don't have to remember that the embroidery needle has a widened eye, or the top stitch needle has an elongated eye. Then we have the Schmetz color chart in here. And what's the most important page? Page 11, clues to change the needle. And here's that picture of a nasty looking needle with clues to change the needle. Then we photograph all the different needle types. We tell you the sizes, the features, the color bands, etc., the uses, etc. In the back of our brochure is a little, the back inside cover are over 80 fabrics that are listed alphabetically with recommendations for needle type and size. So if you've been a little timid to try cork or bamboo, guess what? They're listed right here. So you can get the appropriate needle for cork and bamboo. And some of your lace and your shears are listed here too. So Lots of information in this little ABC pocket guide that comes with the bundles. Now, if you can't wait to get your hands on the bundles with the ABC pocket guide, guess what? You can download it for free. You're going to go to schmetzneedles.com, and at the very top, you'll see resources. So click that, and you will see the cover here of the ABC Pocket Guide. You can print this out on 8.5 by 11 paper. It's not going to be as cute as this one, so get yours from AllBrands. But guess what? You can download this into your phone. You can actually download the Schmetz ABC Pocket Guide right into your phone. There are instructions on how to do that. It is web-based, so it doesn't matter if you're iPhone, Android, Google, etc. It downloads right into your phone or onto your computer or your laptop. All the information that I've shown you here in this ABC Pocket Guide and in today's presentation, you can download right into your phone and have it quite readily available. So keep that in mind. But you know what? You want to get your hands on this print version. Okay, so let me see. Patty is asking the best way to dispose of needles. Well, I'll tell you, in my home, I've got 12 different quilts hanging in my home, and they're all hung with Schmetz needles. What I do, like right here in front of me, my quilt, I think it's 70 some inches wide, maybe it's 90 inches wide. So I've got 10 needles, especially I like the denim needles. They're all used needles. Maybe there's some microtex up there too. And I put those in the wall, and then I use those black metal paper binders, and I clip that onto my quilt top, and then with a little silver hook on the paper clip, I hang that directly on the needle. So now I can take my quilts and my wall hangings down quite easily without actually removing the needle from the wall. So one way to use up your used Schmetz needles is to hang things in your home. As far as proper disposal, you need to check with your local waste management company. Schmetz needles are made of steel, so they are disposable or recyclable. What a lot of people like to do is to collect them in a little prescription bottle. I have a little Altoid tin. I'd show you, but do I have it here handy? Yes, I do. I have one here handy that I keep all my slightly used needles. I love the sound of that. As it gets heavier, it's like a badge of honor that it gets heavier with my used needles. So you can check with your waste management. Most of them will accept them, but again, every community is different. The other thing, if you are just throwing away a single needle, so I would suggest for a single needle, what you do is actually take your needle and run it through a little scrap of corrugated cardboard. That way, when you put it in the trash, neither you or anyone else or your trash person won't accidentally prick themselves. So you don't want to draw blood. Okay, Desiree is asking the best needle for embroidering knit fabrics. Well, sometimes you have to experiment. That stretch or jersey might be good. If you're working with a stabilizer, I would recommend the super nonstick needle. Especially if you're working with a lighter fabric, you probably want to go with the smaller size 70-10 super nonstick, super universal needle. I'll also just mention that we do have a new needle that just recently came out, and it is the super fine black needle, or the black super fine needle. And like the super nonstick needle, it too has that anti-adhesive coating, but this needle has a fine or a sharp point, and an anti-adhesive coating. So Desiree, I think that was, I would try to get my hands on this, and I'm sure AllBrands has this super fine black needle. Give that a try. Sharon is asking about sewing on lace and shears, what size of needle? Well, if you're using lace or shears, probably the finer needle is better. So probably like a size 70. You might have to experiment. If it's a lace or shear that's got stretch, you might want to use the stretch needle or maybe even a jersey needle. If it does not have stretch, you could probably use a universal needle. And I will tell you that lace is, yes, lace is in the little ABC pocket guide. And what is it here? It says select by fabric type, sizes 70-10 to 90-14. So if it's a knit, either the stretch or a jersey, if it's, a woven, a universal, or maybe a microtech. So you've got some choices. Okay, let me see. Oh, let me see. Are there more comments here? Well, as I wrap up, I will tell you on the first Wednesday of every month, I do a Schmetz virtual. You can go to schmetzneedles.com. There's no charge for it. It's about 45 minutes. If you're on Facebook, you can follow Schmetz Needles, all one word, on Facebook. So on Monday, I'll have a post that'll say, hey, I'm going to go live on Wednesday with my Schmetz snippet. Do you have a Schmetz question that you want answered? Post it below. And so on Wednesday morning on Facebook, I'll gather up your questions and I'll answer them live. You can watch either on Facebook, Schmetz Needles, or go to our website, schmetzneedles.com. I get all kinds of questions and I'm happy to answer them for you. I'm starting to travel a bit too. So when I'm traveling and I do my Schmetz snippet lives, I'll oftentimes have guests. So last November, I was at International Quilt Festival. So I had 5 different guests. Last October, I was at the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show. So I had 5 different guests. So every month it's a little bit different. When you go to schmetzneedles.com, sign up for my newsletter. Newsletter actually is going out tomorrow for March. So there's always a needle fact that you can learn about. But where are you going to buy your Schmetz needles? You're going to go right there at AllBrands. You've got a wonderful source of information and skill right there with AllBrands. They've got their local stores and they're online too. So you want to support AllBrands. Okay, let's see. Are there any other questions?
Everyone's just saying how much they've absolutely enjoyed this and how amazing this information has had. And I did see someone ask, can I watch this back later? Yes, like I said, it saves on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it back later, because I know this was so much good information. I literally got a notepad out and I was taking notes earlier because it's good information. We truly appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us.
Well, it's my pleasure. I think the needle is sometimes overlooked until it's broken, but really, you can really simply elevate your stitches by changing your needle. I realize that needles aren't glamorous. They're not sexy. They're not romantic, but you know what? You just can't use your machine without the Schmetz needle.
Right.
So again, thank you, Courtney, for inviting me here today. And thanks to each of you for attending and for using Schmetz needles. I'm starting to travel again. I'm at Original Sewing and Quilt Expos coming up. I think 6 different shows. So if you see me at a show, come on up and say hello. I'll be in Houston. I hope to make it, Courtney, to your new Austin, Texas store pretty soon. I look forward to that.
Oh, yeah. That store is doing fantastic and we're hitting the ground running. And it's we have people coming in being like, I needed this in this area. Thank you. So
Yeah.
if you haven't come out to that new Austin store, she's a pretty one. She's very modern. It's
Oh,
really,
okay.
it's fun to
Modern.
go to. It's a beautiful,
Well,
beautiful
and you
store.
know, I'll be at International Quilt Festival in November, and I bet you will be too, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I always love to come by and say hello to John and team. So maybe you'll see me in the AllBrands booth too
Oh,
as I'm
definitely encourage it, please.
walking
You know,
by.
they moved it up this year. It's now
I
during Halloween for
I
once.
know. I'm kind of looking forward to that. Yeah. So,
Goodness.
okay,
All right, guys.
everybody, get your Schmetz needles from AllBrands, and don't forget about your Grab It My Pad. It keeps your slightly used needles organized and so much handier.
Fantastic. All right, guys. Now, if you haven't put in that hashtag AllBrands, we're about to pull for that $25 AllBrands gift card. So if you have not put in that hashtag AllBrands, hurry right now. Hurry. They're flooding it. Like whenever I start seeing them flood. All right, we're about to go ahead and we're going. Let's see who's going to win it today. Let's see. Paula, congratulations. You just won an AllBrands $25 e-gift card. Please email events@allbrands.com with your name, number, and address to claim your $25 gift card. And again, that is events@allbrands.com with your name, number, and address to claim your $25 AllBrands gift card. Congratulations.
Yay, Paula.
So,
okay.
Thank you so much for joining us, Rhonda. You are welcome anytime.
Oh, hey, you never know where I might show up.
Open invitation, whatever you
Okay,
like.
thank you so much. Okay, everybody, so Schmetz. See you next time.
All right, thanks, guys. See you next week. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.